topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. I had an opening this morning, and I thought I would talk about Ask the Experts, our show. We get so many people who call us wanting information how to become an expert on our show. So I thought I'd spend the first 25 minutes talking about our show. In the second half, we've got a great show. We'll be talking to our personal injury attorneys, Lauren Culta and Angela Irvis. Great personal injury firm if you're in the state of Florida. That'll be our second half show. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. You know, they're never long enough, and I was just talking to our great producer, Rebel. I cannot believe we're almost midway through December. This year has just flown by, but we're expecting the most amazing year next year. For those of you who are in politics, you understand what I mean. But I'd like to talk about Ask the Experts. I cannot believe this show has been running for 14 years. We started off with local radio stations. We started off with the top radio stations in each city. We were in 15 cities. And I got to tell you, it was such a great success story. And about 2 years ago, friends of mine started telling me that podcast was the way to go. Well, I'm old school. You know, I'm still radio, and it's sometimes I look that God gives me messages. I'm a believer. I never have talked to the Lord before, but he definitely gives me signs. And he gave me the most incredible sign. I used to listen to Michael Savage. He had the second largest talk radio show in the United States behind Rush Limbaugh. And one day he just said, I am leaving radio. He was on 680 stations. And he said, I'm going to podcast. And I remember going, how foolish is that? Why would you give up radio that's been so successful for you and all your fans that listen to your show and move to podcasts? That is insane. And then I started talking to friends of mine, people who I trust, people who are close friends, family members, people in this business. And I asked them, I said, what do you think about podcasts? And I got to tell you, I was blown away. People would get so excited about just the word podcast. And they would say, oh, I listened to podcast all the time. I don't listen to radio anymore. That is terrestrial radio anymore. And I could not believe all the response that I got. It was every person I spoke to would tell me how they listen to podcasts all the time. And then what finally got me is I read an article that Ford was no longer in their electric vehicles going to put AM radio in their cars because something about the way electric cars worked with AM radio didn't coincide, and they were going to stop doing. Well, if you know talk radio, most of the stations, I would say probably 90% of the talk radio stations were all AM. And that did it for me. So I started my search for a company that offered the top podcast. And what's so amazing, I'm here in Florida. What's so amazing is I found a local company, W4CY, which, I mean, the chances of that happening, and I looked at that as another sign. And 2 years ago, we moved off of all of our radio stations. It was a little scary too, because I personally had not done podcast. And we moved over, and I got to tell you, it was the best move we ever did, because I found a company that not only offered podcasts, and they're on 60 platforms. A platform would be like iHeart or YouTube or Spotify or Facebook. They also offered radio and streaming TV, which is YouTube. And it was everything that I wanted. And it was like this was where I was meant to be. And then on top of that, the producers for the shows are so important. They are just as important a job as what we do. And we got two of the finest producers. And listen, I have, when you work with so many radio stations, you learn about producers. And we found that we have two just top-notch producers in Rebel and Juan, and our experts adore them. So everything was right. Now, there's still people who are like me who don't really know podcasts, and we're trying to get the word out. But what Ask the Experts does is we talk about areas in legal, health, financial, home improvement. These we have found are the topics that people want to be educated on. I'll give you an example. One of our big areas is public insurance adjusters. And there's a lot of people who did not know what a public insurance adjuster did. So when they had a claim on their home, I mean, it could be fire, it could be hurricane, it could be weather, wind related, they would just accept what the insurance company offered them. They didn't know that there was a such thing as a public insurance adjuster, a person that would assist you, a person that would make the field a level field now. Because face it, most of us don't know a lot about the value of what a roof is, or if your floors are flooded and ruined, And we just don't know that, whereas a public adjuster knows the value of that. I mean, just give you an example. We had somebody who hired one of our public adjusters who was offered $30,000 from their insurance company. The public adjuster got him $150,000. So even with their small cut that they got, look how further ahead this person was, but they didn't even know what a public adjuster was till they saw our show. So there's a lot of uneducated topics out there. It doesn't make us dumb. It just, we just never deal in that area. So in the legal area, some of our top topics are personal injury, which is the next show that we're doing, bankruptcy law, family law. Our big topic is estate planning. That is a topic that is one of our top topics, and we bring you on personal injury attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys, family law attorneys, estate planning attorneys. And they spend their time, their 25 minutes, educating you, the public. Doesn't cost you a dime. And the legal area is so important. It could be very expensive. Another area, our big area, it's called community association law. And what they do is they're attorneys for associations, these condos and HOAs who have associations, which a lot of them do. We have a law firm that does nothing but they're attorneys for these condo associations. So that's a big area for us. When it comes to health, LASIK, like eye surgery, dental implants is a huge area for our show. Hearing loss, home care. I mean, if you've never had to use a home care facility, you would know nothing about where to even start. And here we do is we educate you on home care. Medicare is another huge show topic for us. And a topic that's really becoming a large area for us is neuropathy. There's so many people who thought they had to live with neuropathy. And we have doctors on this show that treat neuropathy and have had some incredible results. Home improvement, probably our number one area in home improvement is public insurance adjuster, like I was just explaining to you. But air conditioning repair, roof repair, there's so many areas when it comes to home improvement. I mean, can you imagine you're getting ready, your air conditioning has broken down and you have to buy a new unit. You know nothing about buying a new air conditioning. And we have experts who come on our show and talk about air condition repair. And we offer this service free to our listeners. Financial is another area we deal in. Our number one area in financial is tax relief. A lot of people go up against the IRS and they have no idea that they're up against people that are prime negotiators, and they want to do everything they can to collect every penny. And you're out there representing yourself. And what we've learned on our shows with tax relief is a lot of times people who try to work an arrangement out with the IRS actually do themselves a disservice because they give out information that they should have never given out. Not talking about lying to the IRS, just talking about giving out information that didn't need to be shared with the IRS. So we have companies that deal with the IRS every day and can get you a better deal than you can get yourself. I would say 9.5 times out of 10. But people did not know that there were companies, there were firms out there who dealt in tax relief. So these are the kind of shows that we bring you. And can you imagine that your practice or your firm or your company having a show on iHeart, YouTube, Facebook, 60 other platforms? I just use those because those are pretty common names that people know about. You know, it's pretty amazing with the iHeart that you can go to Ask the Experts and say, enter tax relief, and your show will come up. iHeart has one of the biggest podcast libraries in the world. And here you are, maybe you have a small company, but here you are on iHeart. And what I love about YouTube, we give you a copy, or you can go to YouTube yourself and pull your show, the video portion of your show. And this is really amazing. You can take that show and attach it to your website. And by having your shows on your website is going to draw more users to your website, and that will move you up in the search engines. So YouTube is, because of the times of our shows, we don't have a lot of people who watch our shows live on YouTube, but they go back later on and watch them. Same thing with Facebook, that in Facebook that we run your shows on, we promote your shows on Facebook. But not only those three, but we also put you on 60 platforms additional that your show runs on. So we bring you a huge audience. Our shows are 25 minutes long, and we are able to sell them by state or by city. So if you want to target, say, your city, 3 days before your show comes on, Ask the Experts promotes your show coming on for that city or that state. A lot of our experts have done so well with our show that they might have started off with a city, but they've moved to also securing the state or states. One of the areas that I left out in health is a huge area, and it is weight loss. Oh my God, weight loss has become probably our top show, and especially with the skinny injections that have come out. And here's a great example about these skinny injections. You've probably seen all the ads for Ozempic on there. First of all, these injections really do work. But one of the complaints that we get because people are uneducated, is they hear about side effects. And what they've learned on here is that there's a very few amount of people who have side effects, and the ones that do usually are not using the product right. With Ozempic, when you first start off, you have a pen injection, probably the smallest needle you've ever seen. You can't even feel it. So that's one thing people learn about it. And that some people go, wow, if this is working so well with 0.25, because you measure it on this pen, how much of your dosage you're going to get, maybe if I move up to 0.50 or 0.1 right away, it's going to work faster. And that is the worst thing that you can do. So you learn about these things on our show, that how powerful our experts are. Now, if you'd like to become an expert on our show, we've been scrolling our name and phone number with those of you who listen on podcast. It's 954-336-3767. It's 954-336-3767. Or you can go to my email, Steven, it's STEVEN, at Ask the Experts, which is plural, radioshow.com. And we would love to discuss with you the possibilities of you coming on our show. We're going to go to a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about personal injury today. And I got to tell you, we were so lucky to find this firm, Calta and Zervas. It's one of the finest personal injury firms, not just in the Tampa area, but in all of Florida. We were so lucky to find them. And we're going to go to a break right now. When we come back, we have Lauren Calta, attorney Lauren Calta. We're going to be talking about personal injury, auto accidents, slip and falls. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On KBRLegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. This is the Ask the Expert show. I'm your host, Steve-O. We spent the first 25 minutes talking about importance of being part of a podcast. And for those of you that have never heard a podcast before, you better catch up because it is absolutely the way to go. And it has blown away what we used to do with radio. This next 25 minutes, like I said, we have one of the finest personal injury firms. And what's so important about this firm is, you know, you never know when you're going to need an attorney. Boy, I tell you what, you know, auto accidents, you know, when you least expect it, slip and falls. I just read where a lady slipped in a Publix. They didn't put a sign out there and glass had broken. You just never know. And then you have to say, well, do I need an attorney? And then if I do, I mean, I heard this ad, I've heard this ad. It is so confusing. And what our show does is we bring you the creme de la creme. You don't have to start looking for a personal injury attorney. We're bringing you the finest group. Let me introduce you to our ladies. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
I hope you didn't get a big head over my introduction to you.
You're always fun.
But you know what? It's really true. It's just like I just read about a lady who slipped in a Publix. She had no idea that was going to happen. You know, when you're in an automobile accident, you have no idea. It just happens. But the worst part about it is if you've never been in an accident before, you don't have any idea what to do. And then when you say, well, I better get an attorney, you are so confused with all the slick ads out there. And it doesn't mean whoever has the most advertising is best. And you don't even know who to choose. So it is so important with a show like this that you take time out of your busy schedule to educate the public. And I think it's so amazing what you do.
Thank you, Steve.
How about that one? You know, and we're both in Florida, and oh my God, the accidents, it seems like there's an auto accident every 5 minutes. But first of all, tell people about your firm.
Well, we are. Oh, go ahead, Angie.
Oh, okay. Well, we've both been practicing personal injury law for me since 1998, and Lauren since when, Lauren?
Since 1995.
Oh, well, there you go.
Now, people aren't going to believe you when you see if they're watching on TV right now.
We're child prodigies, Steve.
I was just going to say we're child prodigies, but thank you for saying that. And so that's been our exclusive focus since 1998 for me and 95 for Lauren. So you could say we have several years of experience in handling these types of cases. And we decided to venture out on our own and start our own law firm in early 2017. And we've been doing it since then, and together as a team, and we've been very successful. We can practice throughout the entire state of Florida. That's where we're licensed. Lauren's also licensed in New York, where we are both from, born and raised. And we've tried many cases together. We've had successful verdicts, and we handle cases such as car accidents, trucking accidents, bicycle accidents, slip and fall, trip and falls, medical malpractice cases. So anything that falls under the gamut of personal injury, and if it's within the state of Florida, that's something that we can handle.
We got to throw in dog bites on there. People don't think about that.
Dog bites, wrongful death.
So, you know, I was just talking to people who are in an auto accident have no idea what to do when they're in an accident, especially when it's the other person's fault. And it is so important on your representation. I want to tell you all this because I do this every day across the country. A lot of these firms, you go to look at, the areas of law they cover, and it's like this long list: bankruptcy, criminal, and family law, and estate planning. What's so great about your firm is all you do is personal injury.
That's correct. That's all we've done. That's all I've done since 98, 95, and that's all Angela's done since 98. So we have close to 50 years combined experience just doing plaintiff's personal injury work, Steve. And I think one of the other things that sets us apart is that we're trial lawyers. Angela had mentioned we've been to trial many times. We're successful. Um, not all lawyers are trial lawyers, and it's important because every case, from the moment the client steps into the office, that case, if it's handled properly and correctly, and geared towards a successful outcome, should be vetted and prepared as if it was going to trial. And not all attorneys know how to do that because not all attorneys go to trial. A vast majority of the firms out there that advertise normally don't try their own cases. They bring in other counsel or they refer it out to other offices for the trial. And going to trial is a very detailed and time consuming process. People think you file a lawsuit and the next step is you're before a jury. And that there's nothing further from the truth. There is so much that goes on from the time you file the lawsuit with the court and have it served upon the defendants, the other parties, till the time you actually get to try your case and go to verdict before a jury. That process can take 1 to 2 years. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a whole process called discovery, and it really is what it sounds like. You try and discover or confirm facts to prove your case as the plaintiff's attorney. As the defense attorney, you try and uncover weaknesses in the plaintiff's case. But there's written discovery called interrogatories, requests to produce, requests for admissions, notice of production from non-parties, subpoenas, corporate representative depositions if you're suing a corporation, like an insurance company or a restaurant, a trucking company. There's mediation, non-binding arbitration. There's all sorts of processes that you have to go through as an attorney, and your client is participating in it all throughout. That a lot of firms out there just don't do that. And I know this is one of Angela's favorite speaking topics, is about going to trial and how a lot of firms out there just don't.
Doesn't it make your job tougher? Because I know there's things that you cannot tell a jury.
Oh, there's so many things you're not allowed to tell a jury, Steve. And the funny part is it's always a question that they have at the end of the trial when they're sent back to the room to deliberate. They always write down a question, the bailiff brings it in, and then the judge calls us back into the courtroom without the jury and says, yeah, the jury's got a question. And I will tell you that most of the time it's the same question. Let me tell you a couple of things that we're not allowed to tell the jury. We're not allowed to tell the jury that there is insurance on the other side. So if the at-fault driver is a, let's say, 25-year-old man who's got State Farm insurance, he's the one sitting at the table. He's the one named in the lawsuit. It doesn't say plaintiff versus State Farm. It says his name. And we're never allowed to tell the jury that, hey, he's got State Farm. Even though State Farm pays for the entire defense, makes all the decisions about what the defenses are going to be. They get to hire all of the experts for the defense, and the jury never knows. And that law went into effect decades ago. It's called the non-joinder statute in Florida. And the reason that that was put into place, Steve, was because the legislature was concerned that juries would be unduly influenced if they knew there was insurance by the defense, if the defense had insurance, and that they would tend to give larger verdicts because they would say, it's State Farm, or it's Allstate, they've got insurance, and that they would not be able to give or render a fair verdict. And so that really takes away from the, I guess, taking away from the giving the jurors the lack of the benefit there, that they're not smart enough to separate that out and just judge a case based on the evidence, that they would be unduly influenced. And so we always have a jury come back and say, does the defendant have insurance? And the judge says, that is not for you to consider. You must consider only the evidence that has been presented for you in the trial. And so then they feel bad for the defendant. So it ends up being counterproductive, right? Because then they're unduly influenced by the fact that they think there's no insurance. So unless you've got a jury that knows how it works, and, you know, because they've either been in the situation or they've been on a jury before, you know, we're stuck basically just with the instructions that the court gives in the current state of the law.
Does it help you? You've been through so many trial cases. Does it help you knowing most of the judges that preside over these type cases?
I don't think that knowing the judge gets you a more favorable outcome, Steve.
Okay.
But I think
how they operate, though.
The benefit to it is knowing how they process the law, or how they'll rule on certain issues, so that you know how to frame your issues or what arguments to be prepared for. I think knowing the judge makes it more advantageous in terms of preparation, but I don't think it benefits in any way the outcome, you know, for or against.
Yeah, no, that I totally agree with, because I want people to understand your experience is so important. I mean, you've seen just about everything you could possibly see.
We've seen a lot through the years. It's been a lot of years and a lot of litigation, and I can honestly say that between Angela and myself, the stories are vast.
We just got a text.
Okay.
Really enjoying your show. It's about time. I guess they didn't know you've been with us for several years. Someone talks on personal injury. They want to know is, and we do not get political on this show at all. They want to know, they said there's so many new drivers in the state of Florida that do not know our laws. Do you see there's more auto accidents now than ever before?
I'm going to jump in on that one more. I would say yes to that. I do see that in the last couple of years that there have been more car accidents. At least, you know, the calls that we're getting, so we can see that. I think with the increase in population in Florida and people moving down here, especially after COVID, because Florida had such few restrictions, and Florida has still not made what I think is probably the most important change to the insurance laws, and that is requiring all of its drivers to carry bodily injury coverage. It is astounding. It truly is astounding, Steve, that in the entire continental US, there are about 6 states only that say we're not going to require the drivers to carry bodily injury liability coverage. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to buy it if you don't want. And Florida is one of them. And what that means is if you have the very minimum insurance, you choose not to buy bodily injury coverage, and you cause an accident, the person that you hit, if they are injured, because they're not always injured, but if they are injured and they run up medical bills, they lose wages, they have permanent injuries that are going to be with them for the rest of their lives, you don't have insurance to pay them for their injuries. And it's really a very common thing we're seeing in Florida, because the agents, and I don't care what insurance company it is, but the agents that are selling insurance, or if you go online, they're telling you you don't need to buy it. And it benefits the insurance companies, but it really hurts the people that get injured. And then there's no way, no remedy for them, no insurance coverage from the at-fault driver to pay them for their injuries. They're required, we all in Florida are required to have property damage coverage. So what Florida is saying is, look, if you hit a 4-year-old on a tricycle, you have to have car insurance to replace her tricycle that she got from Walmart. But if you break both of her legs and her parents can't afford to send her to the doctors, you don't have to have insurance to pay for this 4-year-old's injuries. That's the current state of the law in Florida. It's mind-blowing. It really is.
I gotta tell you what really surprised me. A friend of mine who lost his job, and it's been really tough on him. He had to get the least amount of auto insurance that the state of Florida allows. He's paying for that insurance $250 a month for the least amount of insurance. And I don't see, that is just insane.
Deep pockets, Steve. Deep pockets. Some might say that members of the current Florida government are in the pockets of the insurance industry.
I've heard that.
Yeah. And where that comes into effect is they get bills that are brought up to promote requiring bodily injury coverage, like Angela was saying, that you have to have bodily injury coverage if you're at fault for an accident and you hurt somebody else. There's coverage there for the other person to pursue for their injuries. Those bills usually get stricken down by the Florida government, by the legislature, because it would not be advantageous to the insurance industry to have that law put into effect.
Steve, it's a matter of charging ridiculously high premiums, right? Even if an accident isn't your fault, what we're seeing is that people's their insurance premiums are going up. Any reason that they can think of to increase your premiums, they're going to do it. And it's all about taking in the money, but not paying it out. So if you can convince people not to buy liability coverage, bodily injury, and you can convince them, of course, not to buy uninsured motorist coverage to protect themselves if they get hit by an uninsured driver, major score for them, because they're getting increased premiums for the minimum coverage, and then they never have to pay anything out.
Unbelievable.
It really is.
We just got a text from a listener really enjoying the show. Is there any new laws that are coming out after the first of the year pertaining to auto accidents?
Nothing that's on the radar right now.
What's happening, though, is that when they amended the laws did some major tort reform in March of 2023. They changed the laws, rewrote the evidence code with respect to personal injury cases and trials. And it took away a lot of rights of plaintiffs and made it much easier for the defense and insurance companies to win their cases by allowing what I would consider inadmissible evidence to come in, and making it much harder for the plaintiff to prove their case. And what we're seeing now, almost 2 years later, is that some of these cases are making it up to the Supreme Court of Florida, and some of the issues have been shut down. So we're hoping that in 2025 that our Florida Supreme Court will continue to hack away at these new changes and find them unconstitutional, and then, you know, maybe put us back to where we were. We're cautiously optimistic on that.
There's significant changes too, Steve. One of them changed the statute of limitations for a negligence case, which would include auto accident, bicycle accident, trucking accident, slip and fall, dog bite, from 4 years down to 2 years. So you only have 2 years to either settle the claim or file a lawsuit now, whereas before March of 2023, you would have had 4 years to file that lawsuit or settle that case. The other issue is comparative negligence. We used to be a state where if you and I were in an accident and we were both partially at fault, the jury would just apportion what the fault is. And if I'm the plaintiff in the case and you're the defendant in the case, my verdict would be reduced by my percentage at fault. It could be 50-50, it could be 60-40, I could be 90% at fault and still recover 10% of the verdict. But the change in the law is now if the plaintiff is found more than 50%, so 51% at fault, they get nothing. They recover nothing. It's a zero verdict.
How unfair is that?
It's crazy. And there's now, with that law, they're looking to bring in, which was never allowed before, mention of insurance payments that are made for the medical bills. It integrates health insurance into the evidence that's presented to the jury. And that was never allowed before March of 2023. So like Angela said, it's really has been some devastating effects on the plaintiffs who proceed with cases. But we're hopeful that the Supreme Court will hear the cases as they come and hopefully either turn it around or temper it down tremendously.
Well, we have been running your phone number under the show, but for those who are listening on podcast or radio, give them your phone number and your website.
Sure, Steve. We can be reached at area code 727-937-3171. We do in-person conferences. We do Zoom conferences, phone conferences. Our website, if you want to find us there and look us up and see what we're all about and some of our verdicts and settlements, is www.zervosinjurylaw.com.
Two of the finest personal injury attorneys in the state of Florida. Thank you, ladies. Listen, we won't see your show. This show is going to be replayed in 2 weeks, and we won't see you again till next month. Have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year. And we're so blessed to have you.
You as well.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
you
you.
too.
See
Bye-bye.
you soon. That's the law firm of Calta and Zervos. Incredible personal injury attorneys. Hey, that's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.